I never thought I'd be the guy standing here, staring at a hotel bill and a dozen texts I wasn't supposed to see. My name is Mark, and for most of my life I believed I knew my wife, Lisa. We had a decent marriage, quiet, predictable, nothing flashy but enough. That's what made everything hit so hard. I was out of town on a business trip, supposed to be gone for 3 days. When I got back, I figured I'd surprise her, maybe cook dinner, see her smile. Instead, I found chaos. An entire scene of betrayal laid bare on our bedroom floor. The first thing I noticed was the faint scent of her perfume, something sweet, clingy, mixed with a faint trace of cigarette smoke. That was odd. Lisa doesn't smoke, and she certainly doesn't wear that perfume. I stepped inside and my stomach clenched. The room was a mess, clothes thrown around, her laptop open on the bedside table, and a pair of high heels I'd never seen before. I crouched and my fingers brushed against something cold, a torn piece of fabric, silk, definitely not from anything we owned. I pulled it out and my heartbeat kicked into a different gear. In the clutter of our bed, her side mostly, I found a torn napkin with lipstick smudges and a hastily written note. "Tonight's the night, trust me. Love, James." The name hit me hard. James, her boss, that bastard. I'd always known she worked late, but I'd convinced myself it was just work. Now the evidence told a different story. She'd been lying to me all along. I looked around the room, trying to find anything else. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, sliding a little toward the edge. I hesitated, then reached out and snatched it. Her messages were open. I saw the words I dreaded, pictures of her in our bed wrapped around James, smiling like they had no care in the world. The messages weren't just flirtatious, they were explicit. I read a snippet, her voice whispering, "I can't wait to see you tonight, baby," while James promised her, "I'll make it worth your while." My stomach twisted. I felt my jaw tighten until I was sure I'd bite right through it. It was all there. The lies, the secrecy, the betrayal. I clenched my fists so tight my knuckles turned white. How long had she been doing this? Did she ever think I'd find out? My mind kept racing, trying to process what I'd just seen. The woman I'd trusted, the woman I'd married, had been sleeping with her boss, for God's sake, right under my nose. And I'd been so blind, so naive, thinking we had a normal life. I stayed still for a moment, then slowly sat back on the bed, feeling a cold sweat break out on my forehead. My hands trembled as I looked at her phone again. I had all the evidence I needed. It was undeniable. The question now was what to do next. I knew I couldn't confront her here, not yet. I had to plan this out. Revenge wasn't just about hurt. It was about making her realize she'd lost something irreplaceable. The thing that stung the worst was how easily she'd lied, how she'd twisted the truth into something unrecognizable. Every part of me was boiling with anger, disappointment, and a strange feeling of emptiness. As I sat there, I realized this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about control, about power. I'd been passive, accepting her late nights, her vague excuses, her furtive glances. I was tired of feeling like I was always one step behind, never enough. I'd given her everything, my time, my trust, and this was how she repaid me, with lies, with cheating. But I didn't want her to walk away free. No, I needed her to understand what she'd lost, what she'd thrown away. I had a plan forming, one that would shake her to her core without crossing into violence. I wanted her to see that I wasn't a pushover. That was what I was going to do. I just needed one more piece of proof, one last move to make sure she'd pay for what she did. I looked at the clock. It was late, maybe 11:30 p.m. Perfect. Time to get everything in order. I slipped her phone into my pocket, knowing I'd need it later. Then I moved quietly out of the room, leaving the chaos behind me, feeling the weight of it settle in my chest. I knew tomorrow was going to change everything. I could feel it in my bones. That's when I realized this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about my dignity, and I was done playing nice. The next morning hit like a punch-in. The gut. I woke up with a pounding head and an acidic taste lingering in my throat. My stomach was twisted in knots, and every time I closed my eyes I saw her face, smiling, innocent, lying. I stayed in bed longer than I should have, trying to sort through the chaos swirling in my mind. But I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. Today I'd have to face her, and I knew exactly how I'd do it. I got out of bed slowly, feeling every muscle ache with the weight of last night's revelations. I went to the bathroom, took a long shower, trying to scrub away the numbness, but it didn't help. Her betrayal was a festering wound I couldn't ignore. I dressed in my usual work clothes, nothing too fancy, just enough to look composed, and left the apartment to grab a coffee. I needed time to think, to formulate my next move. I didn't want to just confront her outright. That would be too obvious, too aggressive. No, I needed a plan, a way to catch her in the act again, or at least get her to admit what she'd done. I knew her schedule, her pattern. She'd probably be at work, or so I thought. I called her before leaving the house. "Hey Lisa," I said casually, trying to sound normal. "Just wanted to check if you're busy today. I need to talk to you about something important." There was a pause, then she responded with a slight tremor in her voice. Yeah, I'm at the office now. What's up?" "I'll be home around 4. We need to talk, just us," I said, voice steady but cold. I didn't give her a chance to respond. Instead, I hung up and headed out. While walking down the street, I replayed everything I saw last night. The torn fabric, the lipstick-stained napkin, the explicit messages. I had a plan forming, a way to catch her in her lies again, but this time I'd be ready. I knew she'd try to hide things, spin stories, maybe even deny everything if I confronted her directly. That's when I remembered the unopened envelope I'd found last night, tucked behind her makeup box in the drawer. Inside, a receipt from a nearby hotel dated just 3 nights ago. She booked a room for herself and James. I was sure of it. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but that receipt was proof enough that she'd been planning this for a while. I made my way to our favorite coffee shop, ordered a strong black coffee, and sat at a corner table. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through her messages again. I had the evidence, photos, texts, receipts, and I needed to be strategic. I wasn't about to go in swinging. No, I'd let her think she still had control, that she could lie her way out of this. But I'd be watching, waiting for the right moment. When I got back home around 4, the apartment was eerily quiet. I could feel her presence behind the door, like a predator waiting to pounce. I waited a beat longer, then slowly opened it. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the air, a sick reminder of how far gone she was. She was sitting on the couch, nervously fiddling with her phone. She looked up as I stepped inside, trying to act natural. "Hey," she said softly. Her eyes darted away from mine. "What's up?" I didn't waste time. I pulled out the phone I'd kept in my pocket, placed it on the coffee table. "You tell me," I said, voice tight. "How about you start with what I found last night?" Her face paled. She looked like a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar. "Mark, I cut her off sharply. "You lied, you cheated. I saw the messages, the hotel receipt, everything. How long has this been going on?" She swallowed hard, trembling now. "It's not what you think. It was just a mistake. I was confused and Stop," I snapped. "Don't even bother. I already know everything. You've been lying to me for months. I want to know why." My voice cracked slightly, but I kept my composure. I had to. Her eyes filled with tears. "It didn't mean anything," she whispered. "It was just sex, Mark. It's not like I love him." "Is that supposed to make it better?" I said, voice rising. "You think I don't see what this really is? You threw away everything because you couldn't stay faithful. I gave you my life and you repay me with betrayal." Her face crumpled and she looked away. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to go this far." That's when I decided I'd had enough. I told her I needed time to think, that I wouldn't be staying in the apartment tonight. I'd made up my mind. She'd crossed a line I'd never accepted, and I was going to do something about it. I left her sitting there, stunned, with tears streaking her face. The room felt colder now, emptier somehow. I spent the rest of the night planning. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I wasn't a fool. I knew I had to hit her where it hurt, make her feel what she'd done in a way she wouldn't forget. The revenge plan was starting to take shape. I just didn't want her to suspect how much I'd been watching. Not yet. That's for later. And as I sat alone in the dark, I wondered how she'd react when she realized I knew everything, because I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up with a plan already solidifying in my head. I didn't sleep much after last night, and honestly, I felt kind of numb. The betrayal sat heavy in my gut, but I knew I had to keep my cool. If I let emotion drive me, I'd ruin everything before I even got going. My first step was to gather some more concrete proof. I needed to confirm her schedule, her habits, what she did when she was supposed to be at work. I had a feeling she'd try to cover her tracks, maybe change her routine, or worse, deny everything again. So I decided I'd follow her. Not in a stalker way, just enough to get a sense of her movements without making it obvious I was watching. I slipped out quietly, pretending to leave for work myself, but I doubled back around the block. She left the apartment about 15 minutes later than usual, looking nervous. Her face was pale, eyes darting around as if she was trying to see if anyone was watching her. She had on her coat and bag, and I noticed she took the same route she always did, but her steps were hurried, almost jittery. I kept my distance, blending in with the morning crowd, but enough to see where she went. She headed straight to that same hotel, her secret rendezvous spot. I saw her slip inside, and my stomach clenched again. This was the confirmation I needed. She planned this just like I thought. She'd been sneaking around for weeks, maybe months. I kept watch for a little while just to be sure she didn't slip out or change her mind. When she finally came out, she looked relieved yet tense. She hurried down the street, got into her car, and drove straight home. I kept my distance until she was safely inside, then I headed to a nearby to think. The evidence was stacking up, and I realized I wanted to do something more calculated, something that would hit her where it mattered without making her suspect I was involved. I pulled out my phone and started drafting a text. Simple, direct, to the point. It said, "We need to talk, tonight, at the hotel." No details, just enough to make her worry. I figured she'd assume I knew everything, but I wanted her to feel like she was the one under pressure. I'd arrange everything so she'd come to me willingly, thinking she still had some control. I also made a quick call to a lawyer friend just to get some advice. I didn't want this to blow up in my face or go beyond what I wanted. Revenge can be a fine line, and I didn't want to get reckless. I just needed her to see that I knew that I was serious and I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. By late afternoon, I was back home, sitting in the living room, waiting for her to come. I'd set everything up. My phone battery was full, I had her schedule mapped out, and I knew exactly when she'd walk into that hotel if she went again. I wasn't going to lose her, not without a fight. When she finally arrived, she looked exhausted, like she'd been running from her own conscience. "Hey," I said as she stepped inside, voice calm but cold. "We need to talk, get comfortable." Her eyes flicked nervously to my face, and I saw the moment she knew she'd been caught again, only this time it was different. I wasn't just confronting her, I was ready to take control. She tried to dodge it, but I reached out and gently yet firmly grabbed her wrist. "No more lies," I said, "because I know everything, and it stops today." Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, probably to deny it, but I cut her off. "I have proof," I said, pulling out the photos and receipts I'd collected. "And I'm not just going to leave you, Lisa. I want you to understand you've burned that bridge. You're going to the hotel tonight, and I'm going to be there waiting." Her eyes widened in horror as I laid out my plan, an elaborate but simple setup to catch her red-handed once more, only this time I'd be the one in control of how it all played out. She looked helpless for a second, then burst into tears. "Please, Mark, I didn't mean for this to happen, I swear." "Save it," I snapped. "You've lied to me every step of the way about everything. Tonight I'll see if you're still willing to lie your way out of this. But just so you know." I leaned in close, voice cold as ice. "You're not walking away clean, not anymore." Her body trembled as she stared at me, trembling with the weight of her lies crashing down. I handed her the keys to her car and told her to be ready. I was done pretending. It was time to settle this once and for all. The pieces were in place. All I had to do now was wait for nightfall, and then I'd see her true colors. Night fell faster than I expected, and my nerves were on edge. I sat in the dark, watching the clock, feeling my palms sweat despite the cool air in the apartment. Every minute felt like a lifetime. I kept replaying everything, her lies, the betrayal, how I'd gotten so blind for so long. Now I was just waiting for her to walk into the trap I'd carefully set. Around 8:15, I heard the faint click of her car keys. She was leaving. I stayed perfectly still, listening as her footsteps echoed in the hallway, then down the stairs. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the street outside. I checked my phone, no missed calls, no texts. It was all going according to plan. I grabbed my coat, slipped out the back door, and followed her at a safe distance. She drove to the hotel, the one she'd booked last night, the same one where her rendezvous with James must have taken place. I watched her walk inside, straight past the front desk without hesitation. The lobby was empty and I slipped into a nearby alley to wait. From my hidden spot, I could see the hotel door. A few moments later, I saw her emerge, looking over her shoulder, her face tense. She hurried back to her car, got in, and drove away again just as I'd predicted. I kept following at a distance, knowing she'd be heading home, probably trying to pretend this was all a mistake. When she finally pulled into her driveway, I parked a block away, pretending I'd just arrived home myself. I watched her go inside and then checked my phone. No calls, no texts. Good. She was still unaware I was nearby, watching her every move. That's when I realized I had her exactly where I wanted her. She thought she was safe, but she was about to find out just how far I was willing to go. I went back to my apartment, feeling the adrenaline spike in my veins. I'd done the groundwork, and now I was ready to execute the final part of my plan. I'd set up a camera, one I could access remotely, to record everything tonight. No more guessing, no more doubts. I was going to catch her again, but this time with evidence she couldn't deny. At midnight, I was watching the live feed from my phone. There she was, nervously packing in the hotel room, clutching her phone like a lifeline. I could see her tense shoulders, the way her hand kept trembling as she looked at her phone screen. I knew she was waiting for James. I had to be patient, but every second felt like torture. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She checked it with trembling fingers and then smiled nervously. It was a message from James. A plan, a time, an address. She was making the final arrangements. My stomach clenched at the sight of her planning her next move, her face betraying her nervousness. I could almost hear her heartbeat pounding through the screen. I took a deep breath and opened a new message draft on my phone. I typed carefully, then hit send. "I know what you're doing, don't come home tonight." Maybe she'd see it, maybe not, but it was enough to let her know. I was fully aware that I was watching. As I watched her sit down and open a bottle of wine, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and disgust. She thought she had the power, that she could run and hide, but I'd made sure she knew I was in control now. The next step would be her downfall, and I was going to be the one to bring it. I stayed up the rest of the night, waiting for her to make her move. When the time finally came, around 1:30 a.m., she slipped out of the hotel, heading straight back home. I followed her again. She didn't see me, but I saw everything. She was nervous, glancing over her shoulder as if she knew she'd been caught but was trying to pretend she hadn't. Back at her house, she crept inside quietly. I was still parked a few houses down, watching her through my phone. When she went into her bedroom, I moved closer, just enough to see her slip into pajamas, her face streaked with tears. That's when I knew her plan had crumbled. She'd been caught red-handed, and she knew it. I waited until she was asleep. Then I slipped my key into her purse, took a deep breath, and left a note on her pillow. "No more lies, no more excuses, you lost everything tonight." I knew she'd find it in the morning. I also left a small gift, a simple keychain with a broken heart engraved on it. She had made her choice, and now she'd live with the consequences. I walked out of her house that night feeling a strange mixture of relief and bitterness. I'd finally exposed her. The game was over. The betrayal was out in the open, and I had all the evidence I needed. I was done. The next step was hers. As I drove away, I looked in the mirror. I saw her house fade into the darkness. I knew this was just the beginning, but I also knew I wouldn't be the one who got hurt again. Not this time. Not ever. The following morning, I woke up with a strange clarity, like the fog had finally lifted from my mind. The chaos from the previous days was still there, but now I had a plan. I knew exactly what I was going to do to make sure. She understood that her lies, her betrayal, had consequences, that I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. First thing I did was gather everything I'd accumulated, photos, receipts, the recordings from the hotel room, and put them all in one folder. I needed to be precise, controlled. No emotional outbursts, just facts. I knew I had to be careful. This was about making her feel the loss, the real fallout of her actions. I wanted her to see that I knew that I wasn't going to hide or pretend anymore. I waited until noon, then called her. Her voice sounded hoarse, tired. "Lisa," I said calmly, "we need to meet. I want to talk." She hesitated, then finally agreed. "Okay, where?" "Come to the park," I said. "Near the lake, we need to be honest." She arrived looking nervous, clutching her purse, searching my face for signs of anger or disappointment. The truth was, I was already beyond that. I felt cold now, a different kind of emotion, a quiet resolve. I spread out the evidence on a picnic table, the hotel receipts, the screenshots of her messages, my recordings. Her eyes widened as she looked at everything. Mark, I didn't mean for you to find out like this. Too late, I said. You lied, you cheated, and you thought you could get away with it. I've been watching, waiting for the right moment to see if you'd own up, but I don't think you're capable of that anymore. She looked down, tears welling again. I was stupid. I was lonely, James. It meant nothing, I swear. Stop, I interrupted. That's not why I'm here. I want to know why. Why did you do it? Why did you betray everything we had? She wiped her eyes, voice trembling. It was a mistake. I felt trapped, like I was losing myself. James listened, he understood. I thought I was just seeking comfort. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did, and I regret it every day. I felt my stomach turn. Regret isn't enough. You put your own needs above me, above us. You lied about everything, about work, about us, about your feelings, and I bought it. I believed in you. Her head bowed low. I know I screwed up, but I love you. Mark, I really do. Please just forgive me, give us a second chance. The words hit like a slap. I looked at her, her face streaked with tears, her voice trembling. I felt the sting of betrayal deep in my chest, but I also saw how vulnerable she was, how desperate she was to hold on to what was left. That's when I knew what I had to do. I don't believe in second chances, I said softly. You made your choice, and now I'm going to make sure you pay for it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the phone I'd hidden all along. This is the proof I needed to show everyone what kind of person you really are. Your boss, your lies, everything. Her eyes widened in panic. You won't do that, you can't. Oh, I will, I said, voice steady. Because I want you to see what happens when you throw away everything. You're not just going to lose me, you're going to lose your reputation, your job, your life as you knew it. And I want you to understand that actions have consequences. She broke down crying now, clutching her head. Please, Mark, don't do this. I'll fix everything, I swear. I shook my head. No, Lisa, this is the end of the line. You had your chance and you threw it away. I'm not going to keep pretending I don't see what you are anymore. You want to lie and cheat, fine, but I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension break inside me. It was over. The betrayal was out in the open, and I'd made her face it. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the keys to her car, and placed them on the table. You're leaving, not just today, but for good. She looked at me with wide, hopeless eyes. You're really doing this? Yes, I said simply. You lost my trust, and I don't see a way back. I want you to have some time to think about what you've done, but I won't be here when you come back. I'm done. It's over. She looked down, silent. I turned away, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I knew it was the right thing, but it didn't make the ache any less. I'd finally taken control, and I was walking out of that chapter of my life for good. As I closed the door behind me, I realized something. I'd survived her betrayal, and I'd come out stronger. Sometimes the biggest act of revenge isn't revenge at all. It's walking away with dignity. And that's exactly what I was going to do. The silence after I left her house was deafening. I drove away with the weight of everything finally lifting, yet the emptiness gnawed at me. It was strange, like breathing a sigh of relief but feeling hollow all at once. I knew I'd done what I needed to do, that I'd taken back control of my life, but the ache of betrayal still lingered deep. Trust, once broken like that, doesn't heal overnight. Still, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I finally understood what I had to do, and I'd done it. Over the next few days, I kept my distance from her, letting her process the fallout. I handed over the keys, packed some essentials, and told her to leave. No arguments, no tears, no begging. I wanted her to see that her actions had consequences. I filed for divorce, gathering every document I needed, making sure everything was clear-cut. She could try to spin her story, but I had the proof, pictures, messages, recordings, all of it. No one could deny what was real. It was hard at first. The house echoed with emptiness, and I caught myself thinking about the life I thought I had. But slowly, that pain turned into something else, determination. I realized I was better off without someone who could so casually betray and lie. That realization was freeing. I started focusing on myself, rebuilding, rediscovering what I wanted, what I deserved. One morning I went to the courthouse, filed the papers, and watched as everything was finalized. When they handed me the documents, I took a deep breath. That chapter was officially closed. The weight was gone, replaced by a strange calm. I'd been betrayed badly, but I'd come out alive, and I'd learned something invaluable, that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way to find your footing again. Looking back, I see now that the revenge wasn't just about making her see what she'd lost. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my sense of self. I didn't need to hurt her anymore. I just needed to walk away from the wreckage she left behind. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is leave the ruins behind and start anew. So here's my advice for anyone in a similar situation. Don't let betrayal define you. Gather your proof, be clear-headed, and take control. You don't need to make her suffer, just walk away with your head held high. Because the strongest revenge is living well after everything falls apart. And I intend to do exactly that.